So I am here to share with you all who Victim Services is, the work that we do in the community here. And so that's really the goal of today's information session. It's really going to be about how you can refer to us and the resources and supports that we provide. So before we get started, I know we've actually started a really beautiful conversation already on truth and reconciliation, and folks have shared some ways that they kind of want to continue to create some action and even some resource sharing. Kamari shared a book, which is called The Inconvenient Indian. And Meredith shared supporting Indigenous run businesses is a great idea to kind of turn words into action. So thank you both so much for sharing that with us. Really appreciate it. So my name is Jasminder, and I want to acknowledge the land on which I live, work, and play. My family immigrated to Canada over 30 years ago. So when they immigrated to Treaty 13A territory in Mississauga. So essentially Mississauga falls into 13A territory. They moved specifically to Malton, and then Treaty 19 territory in both Brampton and Caledon. So they left India after the Sikh genocide that took place in Punjab. And we know that when it comes to a lot of these international issues, in particular, the root of this issue, British colonialism did play a part. They played a role. Half of Punjab is located in India, the other half is located in Pakistan. And the ongoing sort of contentions between India and Pakistan, and somebody that decided to sit down and literally draw, lines on a map one day and say, this is, what's going to go where, really had an ongoing impact on the safety of Sikhs in the region. And so my family is very grateful, and they were very grateful to move here. And we're very grateful to have a home here where we were able to find safety and peace. But, especially over the years, we came to know that the safety and peace that we're very familiar with comes at a very high price of the oppression of other groups through genocide and war. So now I live in Toronto, which is 13A territory. And for thousands of years, this has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. And today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to live, work, and play here in Toronto. I also want to kind of talk about what this means in terms of who I am and the work that I do, and the places where I want to continue my advocacy. So I do work in gender-based violence prevention, and I know firsthand and sort of through people that have shared knowledge with me that Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people, as well as from all the data, are disproportionately murdered and have had violence perpetrated against them. And I commit to building relationships with Indigenous organizations and activists in my field to ensure that I can make an impact in my work. I also commit to supporting activism that's being done by Indigenous communities, both for searching their landfills in Winnipeg and to support Wet'suwet'en and self-determination when it comes to building the Coastal Link gas pipeline, or not building the Coastal Link gas pipeline, and seeing ways that I can present some solidarity there. And I really do recommend for folks to when we do land acknowledgements, and the same, and we've kind of touched on this topic today, the same as wearing our orange shirts, the same as going out and participating in something tomorrow. It's all the beginning of a conversation. It's the beginning, and for many people it's not the beginning, it's a part of a broader lifelong journey where we're really trying to do the work and be here and be supportive. And so I'm thinking of ways to turn words into action. So I really want this land acknowledgement to serve as a starting place to action. And I think it's really important for all of us to reflect on the land, both that we come from, the land that we live on, and what we can really do to make an impact and turn words into action. So in terms of our conversation today, I want to talk about what Victim Services is, the programs that we provide, the referral process to refer to us, how you can get involved, and our contact information, which I feel like will be all the important things that you all want to know about us. And I will also welcome questions at the end of the presentation, just because I found a lot of the times with informational presentations, folks get really excited and they're like, that's a great program. How do I refer? And I'm like, I'm getting to that. So what I'll just say is, we're going to get there. And if you have any questions, I would highly encourage write them down, because I don't want anybody to forget. But if you do have any burning questions that you're like, you're probably not going to get to that based on this agenda, please feel free to ask. If you have questions that are about specifically somebody that you are supporting, and it's an individual case, please feel free to connect with me afterwards, just more on that individual basis to respect and support confidentiality. But if you have questions that you feel everybody can learn from, please do feel free to ask them in the group setting. So Victim Services is a registered charity. We've been one since 1996, and we help anybody who's the victim of a crime or sudden tragedy. And so a lot of folks, there's a huge misconception that we're a part of the police. We're actually not a part of the police. We're a separate, not-for-profit organization and entity to the police. So that means a couple of different things. One, it means that, we're kind of under the same obligations to report as anybody else, so any of you in this field, but our information is not automatically shared with the police. So what somebody tells us will be kept confidential, such that nobody's at imminent risk of harm to themselves or to others. So that is something that's very important to remember. People don't have to prove to us that they've, experienced some form of violence through a police report or anything like that. That's not necessary, because people do not have to report to the police in order to get our supports and resources. And so, of course, like I said, that's not necessary, and we will provide support regardless. If somebody does choose to report to the police, which is completely their choice, we don't force anybody to do anything that they don't want to do or that they don't feel comfortable doing. Our work is really rooted in a strengths-based approach and a trauma-informed approach. So our goal is essentially to walk alongside any person that has experienced crime or a sudden tragedy. It's recognizing that they have their strengths, and how can we help them feel safe, supported, and empowered to be able to make those decisions on their own, and hold their hand if they need us to. So that's really the goal of the work that we do. When I say crime or sudden tragedy, what I mean by that is it can be any one of these categories. It can also be things that fall outside of these categories. So intimate partner violence, sexual assaults, harassment, criminal harassment, human trafficking, homicide, attempted murder. And that also means when I say something like homicide, it might be like, wait a second, we provide support to the family members or the friends or anybody that's related to that situation. Attempted murder, assault, so it could be a physical assault. So for example, somebody, recently was beaten up by a stranger, so we can help support them. Even if it's a family member, something like that, we can help support them there as well. A robbery where something was stolen from somebody. So for example, a couple of years ago, there was this huge robbery at Cash Money, for example. And that's an example where we would show up and we'd be able to support people and provide some supports and resources for them to deal with the trauma of what they've been through. Mass casualty events. So for example, the Toronto van attack, we were there. The Eaton Center shooting, we were there. We actually have a mass casualty team. So whenever there's an incident like that, we actually have a bunch of trauma counselors that can actually go out, be present at that scene, and provide supports and resources once they've been cleared to do so, for example, by either the police or ambulance. As long as they're healthy and they're safe and all that stuff, we're here to provide that support. Sudden tragic events. So that could be, for example, we had a client where her boyfriend passed away in a car accident where he drowned. So that's an example of a sudden tragic event, which would not necessarily be a crime, but it is a tragic event where somebody may need some additional support, right? A fire could also be considered one of those sudden tragic events, a suicide or a sudden death as well. So those can all be things that, they don't necessarily have to be a crime, but if it's sort of a sudden tragic event, in many instances, we can provide support. In terms of the framework that we take at Victim Services, and I touched on this a little bit, I'm just seeing one question in the chat, and it's, will the slides be shared to the group by email? Yes, they will, and we'll also be adding that recording as well. So you'll definitely have reference to this. So please don't feel that you have to, write frantic notes. You are more than welcome to just sit back and really take a moment to absorb the information that we are sharing with you. So when it comes to the frameworks, we take a couple of different approaches, and I have touched on these in a couple of different ways so far. We really aim to take an anti-oppressive and anti-racist approach. We aim to take a client-centered approach, a strengths-based approach, crisis intervention supports, and then trauma-informed approach. So let's go through each one of those and how we actually do that in practice. So when it comes to anti-oppressive practice, pardon me, there's a couple of different things that really fall into that. So the first thing is that we recognize who we are and we take part in critical self-reflection in order to avoid recreating the oppressive social relations that exist in the first place. And so even reflecting on things like providing things like social work and supports, right? What are the roots of that, and how, social work has been used as a tool of oppression against Indigenous people, against Black youth. And then when we also look at things like the 60s scoop, and we look at things like the current day millennial scoop, recognizing that there is a lot of power and privilege that we hold, and understanding what that actually looks like. And because we aim to understand what that looks like, that actually means that we can aim to avoid recreating those oppressive social relations that pre-exist. It's almost like if I were to show you a word map, and I showed you a word map and you only see 3 of the words, and the words, one of them is written in Mandarin, the other one is written in Hindi. And I say, can you tell me what these words have in common? Well, you might say they're words, but you might not realize the full picture. Then I share a full picture with you, and it says hello in a bunch of languages. It says hello, hola, bonjour. It says hello in ways that means hello, or saying hi, or welcoming somebody. And then that provides you with the context of saying, oh, hey, those 2 words that you shared with me earlier in Hindi and in Mandarin, they actually mean hello. So the reason why I share that example is sometimes we need to actually understand what the broader picture is in order to be able to understand when small acts happen, that they're a part of that broader system. So it's helping our staff understand what that broader picture is, and who we are, and how we fall into those small pieces, and how we might be a part of that, and so critically engaging to ensure that we don't sort of reproduce that. Critical assessment of service users' experiences of oppression. So we try to understand the diversity and multiplicity of oppression in service users' lives. So this is something that's really important as well. We try to really understand who our service users are. And then we try to take an intersectional approach where we try to understand not only are people diverse, but they're also diverse in a multiplicity of ways. So that could be that, I'll give my own example. I'm not just a woman. I'm not just South Asian, but I'm a South Asian woman. And so the multiplicity of the diversity and that I hold actually would impact the services and the supports that I might need. And so really being able to have that deeper understanding, and also us trying to increase our cultural competency in a variety of different cultures to ensure that we truly gain a better understanding of the oppression that a service user might face. And so that's a huge part of this as well. Empowering service users. So we try to use practical ways to promote empowerment that include ensuring that service users' views are stated and their needs are incorporated into assessment and solution options. So it's not just, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to not recreate the power dynamics in which they've already been oppressed, but rather trying to promote empowerment for those service users and trying to help them understand basically how we can come up with solutions together that are really led by that person in order to avoid recreating that power dynamic of, you know, I'm the person that has more power than you, so therefore I'm going to assert that power over you. And related to that is we work in partnership with the service user, right? We recognize that they are the expert in their own lives. And so when we work in partnership, it kind of we'll never actually be able to fully get rid of the unequal power dynamics that are inherent to a relationship where we are the service provider and they're the service user. We recognize that. But when we work in partnership, it kind of tries to balance out those unequal power dynamics. And so that's really the goal of working in partnership and empowering those service users. And then also minimal intervention is another huge one for us. We recognize that there are things that we can do to provide early intervention and support. So that can be education, support, resources that are available that we can provide early on to avoid a lot of the bigger things that we see happening down the road. And so a really great example of this, and Deanna does this work too and is absolutely incredible at it, is sexual consent education and sexual assault education. So all of this is really important because, for example, we know when people are empowered with the knowledge of what does consent actually look like, they're less likely to actually, be perpetrators and also be able to recognize when they're in a situation where their boundaries may potentially be violated and also help them recognize what their boundaries are so that they can assert them in the first place. And so that leads to situations in which there's minimal intervention that needs to take place. So it's recognizing that actually, I'm sure that many of us have heard, especially if you're in social work, that sort of upstream, downstream approach. So if you're seeing a whole bunch, if you're at the bottom of a river, you're seeing a whole bunch of people that are drowning in the river, you can stand at the bottom and keep pulling those people out. That's going to feel really exhausting, right? Eventually you might come up with this idea where this light bulb goes off and you go, hey, why are people falling in and drowning in the first place? And then not only do you provide the intervention at the end, then you actually go upstream, you go up the river and you figure out, okay, this is why people are falling in the first place. And so then you provide an intervention there so that people don't fall in. And so what we call that is taking a multi-pronged approach. And when it comes to, sexual violence, for example, or intimate partner violence, for example, we have a really great program, which I'm going to talk more about, which is the TIER Youth Program. And what that stands for is Teens Ending Abusive Relationships. And I have the honor of being a part of that program, which I'm so grateful for. Essentially, the goal of that program is to educate and empower young people on issues like cyber violence, on issues like consent, on issues like healthy relationships, on human trafficking. And we do these presentations. We are approved to go into any Toronto District School Board school or Toronto Catholic District School Board school. We also do go into organizations that are running youth groups, and we do these presentations for them as well. So we are always happy to come in and have that conversation with you too, or within any programs that you might have where you want somebody to have a conversation with them. And that's a really great example of how we go upstream and we understand the root causes of why are things like intimate partner violence happening? Why are things like sexual violence happening? And people need our support. And until, we really, really intervene really well at the beginning, we're going to continue to have people falling in. And so we know that that work might take some time, but being on both ends, it really does help. And it really does help us understand the root causes and how we can support in those roots. And what that does is it avoids that ending part altogether. right? It avoids people even needing to use our services. So um yeah, we love our work, but we'd also love to live in a world where a world that's free from crime and violence and sudden tragedy. And so we really want to make sure that we sit with that minimal intervention approach. And of course, we recognize that things like sudden tragedies will happen, but also how are we going to build resilience in people so that when those situations do happen, they have the supports and resources and understanding from the beginning. So that way they have more resiliency and are able to bounce back after something like that happens and move forward with their life in a very healthy way. Another approach that we take is a client-centered approach. So when it comes to our tier program, I'm just going to go back to that really quick because we had a really great question about the youth that we support. So in terms of our youth education programming, it's anything from grade 7 and up. We're going in and we're doing those presentations. So usually we also do it for young adults as well. So we also go into colleges and universities whenever requested, and we provide those supports and resources too. Um, so there is that as well. So when it comes to the client-centered approach, this approach we also take, and it's really focused on looking at who the client is and providing supports according to that. So there's a couple of different parts of the client-centered approach. These are the three major parts: genuineness and congruence, unconditional positive regard, and empathetic understanding. So when it comes to genuineness and positive regard, it's a realistic understanding of how internal experiences like thoughts and feelings interact with external experiences. So not expecting that, our clients are going to be happy all the time, for example, right? How that might, how those experiences might impact them, and helping them, and us having a realistic understanding of that can really help us understand where our client is coming from. Also having unconditional positive regard, so accepting the client for who they are and displaying support and care no matter what the client is facing or experiencing. I think that's another huge one too. Because for a lot of clients, oftentimes they might feel judged and shamed, and stop using services, resources, and supports, which, can definitely be a huge issue. So really, accepting the client for who they are and supporting them and caring for them no matter what is really huge. And then also empathetic understanding. So seeking to understand, pardon me, the client and maintain an awareness and sensitivity to the client's experience and point of view. So being empathetic, right? Trying to understand what their life experiences are like, and being empathetic towards those individuals. And so, we really want clients to feel like they can come to us and get the supports and resources that they need. Finally, we also take a strengths-based approach. And so what that means is we recognize that somebody who has experienced crime or sudden tragedy, it doesn't mean that they're weak. We take a look at their strengths, and then we try to build on those strengths in order to help them move forward. So first and foremost, goal setting. So knowing why they want to make the change, creating an actionable plan, helping them understand what their goals are, not pushing our goals onto them. Strengths assessment, understanding what their strengths are. So also helping our client take time to understand and identify what their strengths are and what they bring to the table. Environmental resources. So it's holding accountable and building with encouragement, connection to community resources. So, it's helping them connect with other organizations as well, not just saying, this is my client and, I'm the only one that's going to take the lead on this, but it's really building, a circle of care where we are, they're connected to community resources, to whatever it is that they feel they might need in order to achieve whatever goals they might have. And alternative, and we also look at alternative methods, right? So it's not just the same method that's going to work for every single person. And so looking at what works for different people based on whatever strengths that they have from our strengths assessment. We also want to create, hope-inducing relationships. So we want to make sure that our clients feel like they're being guided by somebody that's positive and encouraging and really sees the best in them. And finally, we want to provide autonomy to make meaningful choices. And so once again, relating back to the client-centered approach, the client always has the ultimate choice when it comes to the support that we're providing them. So that's really the goals of the way that we provide support to people, how we want to make people feel, and what our service providers always aim to do for the people that we're supporting within the community. So this is what we always want to, hopefully make people feel like. And then finally, we also take a trauma-informed approach. And I'm sure that, I'm probably preaching to the choir at this point in terms of everybody likely knows what all of these approaches are. But it's really I think important to also just touch on the fact that we take that trauma informed approach and we consider that there are going to be aspects of people's story which we have absolutely no idea about. So this idea almost like of an iceberg, where there's the part which we see, which could be actions and behaviors and language, and then there's the whole part that's under the iceberg, which we actually have absolutely no idea about. Pardon me. And then it's recognizing that there's relationships between the violence and trauma that they may have experienced. So that means even if what I see is the top of the iceberg or the tip of the iceberg, and what that is somebody's behaviors or their language, maybe they're swearing a lot or something like that. It's recognizing that actually there's a lot going on underneath the surface, and I'm not just going to make a judgment or a snap judgment based on what I see at the top. And what that actually does is it increases safety, control, and compassion for people that are seeking services from us and might have a history of trauma and violence. So we're still going to treat that person with the respect and care that they deserve. So we're still going to treat that person with the respect and care that they deserve, and not just assume that this is a bad person or something like that, recognizing that a lot of this can come from trauma, and then using language and responses that prevents re-traumatization. So a huge part of the anti-oppressive approach, which really focuses on not recreating the dynamics of oppression, is really important when it comes to re-traumatization, which is a conscious or unconscious reminder of past trauma that results in sort of re-experiencing of that initial trauma that they experienced. That could be triggered by a situation. It could even be triggered by somebody's attitude or expression, or by certain environments that are replicating those dynamics. So say, for example, we have, a human trafficking survivor that is going into a hospital. And when they go into that hospital, they're really frustrated or they're really annoyed. And then, that hospital staff says, you know what, we're going to take this person and we're going to give them some sedatives in order to calm them down. And, that person gets really frustrated and they get really angry at the fact that they're trying to, this person's trying to put these sedatives in them. Afterwards, right, one of the nurses finds out that, hey, actually, every time this person was being sexually assaulted, their trafficker was putting sedatives in them. So that feeling that that person had from those sedatives, and the fear of those sedatives is what actually caused them to have the reaction that they did. And so if you only see the tip of the iceberg, you might see that as somebody who is angry, who's non-compliant, who's violent, who's frustrated, who's swearing. But then when you fully understand the situation, you actually get to see a totally different side of things. And it's important to take that trauma-informed approach, because we don't need to know what's going on under the surface in order to treat people with kindness and compassion. It's as simple as that. And so with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of move into a conversation around the programming that we actually have here at Victim Services Toronto. So just to kind of summarize our programs, and I'll jump into detail on every one of the programs that we have a crisis response program, an enhanced services program, project exit route, and then we have community programs, and then student placement and volunteer programs as well. So let's jump into detail on our crisis response program. So our hours of operation are 24/7, 365 days a year. We have a crisis line, which anybody can call. So we take police referrals, we take agency referrals from any community agency, and we also take self-referrals as well from clients directly. So anybody can reach out to us and ask for our support. Support is primarily provided for crisis response over the phone. However, we can go out and go on scene. Oftentimes, it might be police officers that request for us to go on scene. So once the scene is cleared and considered to be safe, we can go on there. We also have some community service providers that might call in and say, "Hey, I'm taking my client to the hospital. I think it would be really helpful if you join me." Right? So, we can provide support on the scene as well. The types of support that's provided, it's actually crisis intervention support that we provide, assistant with urgent and practical matters. So, almost like we're linking people around Toronto to kind of get whatever they might need. So that way that person doesn't feel like I have to make 30 different phone calls in order to have a place to sleep tonight, right? So it's locating, arranging, linking, and coordinating services across the region. So that way we can ensure that that person gets the support that they need in those urgent and more practical matters. We can also write support letters and do advocacy and outreach. Um, we also in-house, we have over 35 different languages with our staff, our volunteers, and with our translation services, we provide support in over 300 different languages as well. So, there is quite a bit of, we do definitely try to provide services and resources in the language that would work best for somebody. So we are definitely here to support with that. So, in order to connect with us and make a referral to our crisis line, for community agencies, they can obtain consent from the client. Our services are voluntary, so you must obtain consent prior to the referral. If they don't want to talk to us, we're not going to coerce them to talk to us. Also calling our victim services phone numbers. So it's here on the screen, and the slides will also be shared afterwards. So if you get a voicemail, leave a message with your contact information and we'll get back to you. We do have sort of at any given time, 3 to 5 people sitting and answering those phone calls. But if you're not getting a response, that means all the phone lines are busy. And so we do want to make sure that you are able to connect with an intake worker. So the quickest way, instead of actually calling us back, that'll probably save you and us time, is just leaving a voicemail and we get back to it as soon as possible. And then you speak with an intake worker, and where you'd be providing whatever information, including the client's information, their contact information, and details of the situation that took place. So that's how you would connect with us. And you can refer somebody. We always recommend, a warm transfer, for example. So wherever the opportunity is present, please, feel free to have that person sitting beside you as you actually give us a call and make that referral to us. When it comes to the general public and them connecting with us, like I said, they are able to give us a call. So once again, our services are voluntary. If somebody, for example, you say, "Hey, do you want to chat with victim services?" and they say no, you can leave our phone number with them, because then they could just call they can call us on their own time. And they can call us on our public phone line as well. And once again, if they don't receive a response, they can leave a voicemail. You can always leave our number with people. Anytime you have a doubt where you're like, "Oh, I'm kind of worried about this person. They really don't want any help. I don't know what to do." Leave our phone number with them. Fingers crossed, if they ever need it, they're always welcome to give us a call, right? So that way there's some kind of support that's present. And then they'd be speaking with a trained crisis counselor. The second type of support that we provide is enhanced services. And so our enhanced services, sort of fall into the enhanced services that we provide, fall into 3 major categories. So we provide high risk support services. So this is clients that are at high risk of violence. Um, Pardon me. So this can be especially from an intimate partner. So that includes things like harassment, sexual assault, intimate partner violence. And we provide things like home assessments, safety planning, and things like that for people who are at risk. We also provide case management. So if there is somebody that has been, the victim of a major crime, whether that's homicide, suicide, human trafficking, we will actually assign a case manager to that person. And they can get some support through that person as well. So that's something that we do provide. That crisis line is something that's a little bit more quick, more immediate, connecting to supports and resources quite quickly. Case management is actually much more longer term, 1 to 3 months on average. And we also have access to funding through the Ontario government through a program called VQRP Plus. And what that does is it supports direct victims, families, and witnesses of violent crimes in the immediate aftermath. Um, Please never promise to somebody that we can get the money for a short-term expense, because it's not actually up to us. We go above and beyond to try and make sure that they get whatever we think would probably help their application, and write it in such a way that it's really supportive of that person, if they're eligible. But of course, the final say is up to the folks that are working within the government. So what we provide is short-term financial support with some expenses. So those are like safety and practical needs. This is really a means of last resort, and people have to meet that eligibility criteria. So what that means is, for example, we have funding for emergency housing. So you guys might have heard, oh, Victim Services has a hotel program. We don't have a hotel program, but through VQRP, sometimes people can access a hotel for a very short amount of time, until they can find housing through an alternative means. For example, we can potentially get, money approved to send somebody to, to and from appointments, right? So for transportation, we can, potentially get some funding for food, right? And this includes both for the person who's a victim, but also for any dependents that they might have as well. So that includes, for parents, they will be able to get funding for children that they may have with them as well. In order to access VQRP Plus, we also have to show that we have exhausted every resource that already exists out there for free, in order to access this funding. So that's something that's important to remember as well. So for example, they won't just give money for food, but they will, so they're not just going to give that outright. You have to actually show, we tried going to food banks or something like that, and we didn't have access available. So that's kind of what that ends up looking like when it comes to VQRP. And that's why we say, please don't promise anything. We really do want to help, but of course, the eligibility criteria, the final say is not up to us. Project Exit Route, we actually launched in January 2022. So what that means is we have victim services staff that are located in 4 localized police divisions. So that's 14 division, 23 division, 31 division, and 43 division. So we have victim services staff who literally have no job other than to support. They have a job. Their only job, pardon me, is to support people who have been victims of crime or sudden tragedy, in a trauma-informed and culturally appropriate way. So that's their main job. And so, oftentimes people may go to the police, and the police's job is to investigate a situation. And so, that victim support, it really comes, we're really able to provide that. So it's really kind of shifting the way and that people receive support, even when they're going in person to a police division to make a report. So it's kind of having quicker access to that as well. So that's Project Exit Route. And then we also have Project Recover. This is really cool. Some of you may have heard of Project Recover. It actually provides financial support to survivors of human trafficking, not just in Toronto, but across all of Canada. So we work with Canadian creditors to remove fraudulent and coercive debt from the victim's name. So for example, traffickers may have, put the hotels under that person's name, or an additional cell phone, or even a car. We can advocate to Canadian creditors that this person's been trafficked. It was in fact their trafficker that incurred this coercive debt. And then that way trafficking victims are actually able to move on with their lives without that financial debt, really, really weighing them down. So that's a really huge one as well when it comes to Project Recover. And then we also have a trauma dog program. So some of you all may have previously met Dandy. Dandy is our 8-year-old Labrador Retriever. She is a specially trained and certified trauma dog, and she provides support to anybody that has been a victim as well. But the priority is really given to children and youth to provide comfort after a tragedy. And, we have Dandy. Dandy goes to court a lot of the times when it comes to supporting sexual violence victims as well. And yeah, she is just awesome. She's really great. So yeah, Kumari saying I love Dandy. Yeah, we do too. Yeah, she's really, really amazing, and she's a great dog. So we're so grateful to have her. She is 8 years old. I believe she's around 9 now, or turning 9. And so that means she is retiring soon, but that also means we are hiring another trauma dog at Victim Services as well. So that way Dandy can enjoy her retirement. And Dandy helps clients from a couple of different ways. She provides comfort, can be a positive distraction in situations that are really high stress and anxiety, a source of physical touch. So we know that, physical touch, especially with something like a dog, can help reduce blood pressure. And so really helping support there. And then Dandy's main roles, main jobs are court support, victim support, and community outreach as well. And Dandy also received the Ontario Women of Law Enforcement Teamwork Award in 2019 for her support in court. So yeah, she's a dog with many accolades, and is very well regarded in the community. So she's absolutely amazing. And then, of course, we have our community programs. And so our community programs, I did touch on this before. We have our tier program. Our tier program has a couple of different things underneath it. It has our workshops, so our tier workshops themselves. And then our tier talk, which is a social media initiative. We also have our youth symposium, and then our human trafficking workshop. So I'm going to jump into details on all of these. And if you would like to contact somebody when it comes to our community programming, that would be Tasmin Fraser, who's the manager of community programs and projects. So her email is tasmin.f@bstoronto.com. So our tier program, it has 3 major components. So one is our workshops on cyber violence and healthy relationships. And then we also have our human trafficking workshops. We have a youth leadership program where we have a group of amazing youth leaders that, really take part in that program. We meet every single week, and we have those young people take part in many different initiatives where we teach them, and then they go back into their communities and raise additional awareness. And then we also have a social media initiative as well. So if you follow our Tier Youth TO Instagram account, that's Tier Youth TO, TEAR, Youth TO. We have put a lot of amazing videos. Those are the videos that I was mentioning at the beginning, where we had that really amazing talk with Daniela for the month of September, and we're having a really great talk with Deanna in the month of December. So we're going to be seeing a lot of those videos. So definitely follow us there. And it's really grounded in 3 major principles, which is youth empowerment, adult and youth allyship, and youth peer mentorship as well. In terms of our workshops, the goal really is, they're free, they're interactive, they're engaging. It's designed for youth between the ages of 12 to 18 within the city of Toronto. So if they're within the city of Toronto and it's not a private school, for example, the supports are free. So also if it's for um, community agency that has some youth programming, it's free for them as well. And it's really about helping empower young people with the tools and knowledge to navigate the digital world and make informed and healthy decisions about their relationship choices and helping them gain a better understanding of consent. We also have human trafficking prevention workshops. And these workshops are delivered for students between the ages of 12 to 18, parents and families, and educators and service agency staff. And so any requests that you have for any presentations, they should go to tier@bstoronto.com. So I just want to flag that for you all. You can definitely send all of your requests for workshops there. If you're a parent, or a community member, and say, for example, you think, you know what, my kid's school would really benefit from this presentation, you can actually forward our information, or you can email us directly at tier@bstoronto.com. We can provide you with information that you can forward to your child's school. We also do things like parent presentations for human trafficking. So I was, for example, just doing one last night at a masjid in North York, and just having that conversation with parents on education and empowerment around human trafficking, especially sex trafficking. And so, just kind of sharing that with you all. So if you're on a parent council, or you think, hey, I want to host a community event, or I have service agency staff that need to be trained up on these issues, are more than welcome to do that training for you all. Our youth leadership training is really focused on helping young people that are in high school get their high school hours by being leaders in many different fields. And we do a yearly recruitment. It's a 1-year commitment, as long as they're located in Toronto, Etobicoke, North York, or Scarborough, and between grades 9 to 12, they're able to participate. And so we meet every single week to discuss various different topics, we talk about different leadership activities, connect as a group. Oftentimes we collaborate with other agencies, we have workshops, we have guest speakers. If you have a cool workshop where you have a really cool talk that you think we can benefit from, we would love to have you there. So for example, we've had folks from White Ribbon come in, we've had folks from Metrac come in, some folks from the White Ribbon folks, they had a great conversation on healthy masculinity and gender equality and gender-based violence. Metrac did a really inspiring presentation on anti-Black racism. And so, if you feel that your organization, has some really great workshops that you offer, please connect with me. And I would love to have a further conversation with you as well. I'll definitely provide my information in the chat for you all as well. So you're always welcome to connect with me if you have any ideas or want to request either a presentation or to come present at our youth leadership program. Once again, we also have our social media. And I touched on this, one more shameless plug for our social media, Tier Youth TO. And then we have a really cool hot seat video series where we have monthly themes, and our youth and program staff interview community partners on various different themes. And so we're really grateful to our community partners that come out and do that work. So this is just an example of what our social media feed looks like. We're always putting out great stuff, so feel free to follow us. We also have a youth symposium. So the email address for this has changed. You actually can email me directly when it comes to the youth symposium. It's going to be taking place most likely on Human Trafficking Awareness Day in February of 2024. And it's open to youth, all youth ages 12 and up in Toronto. So last year we had over 5,000 people sign up. So that was educators within schools. And it was within Toronto, that basically were playing the information on the youth symposium on their whiteboard, for example, and that was being streamed to their entire class. And then they had things like lesson plans and curriculums that they used in order to have further conversations about it. And so our youth symposium is focused on human trafficking. However, human trafficking is not just an issue that happens in isolation. Human trafficking is an issue that happens in conjunction um, with various different issues, including things like intimate partner violence, including things like consent, including things like cyber violence, and oppression in various different ways. And so we really find ways to have those conversations in a really deep and meaningful way. In terms of our community programs, we really want to do a lot of preventative programming. We want to come out to any outreach events. So if you have any events that you think, it would be great if you all could come out, we would love to do that. We take part in several different special projects across Toronto as well, including sitting on various different advisory committees too. Finally, we also have student placements and volunteer programs. We recruit yearly. We have placement students that are completing advanced placements in doing MSW degrees, social work degrees. We also have students. One of our students is actually on here today. Hi, Trisha. Trisha is absolutely wonderful and doing a program around youth. And so is a part of our community programming, and so we're able to really have that as well. So we're so grateful. It's not just MSW or social work students that we take on. We also have an intensive training that covers crisis intervention, trauma-informed care, and specialized skills and more. So it's a very intensive training, which is honestly amazing for people that might want to, kind of sharpen their skills, so that everybody is sort of on the same page. Recruitment is currently closed at this time, but Jacqueline is our volunteer coordinator. Her email is volunteer@bstoronto.com. So you can always reach out to us there, and we're happy to provide that support. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave our contact information up on the screen. And I am going to now open it up to questions.
Hi, Jasminder. It's Tammy. And I had a question. Actually had a couple. One of them would be I actually had the privilege of meeting Dandy, awesome dog. And I recall there being some tools that were provided to kind of go through the court process with somebody. It was like a picture booklet. So although it was used for children, for some of the people we support, it would be a good visual, and it's sort of modified to kind of go through that. Would those kind of tools be available to someone who isn't a client of victim services if they happen to be going through some of those processes, or would they only be available through the actual service?
I feel like they would be available to everybody.
Yeah.
So that shouldn't be an issue at all. I know that we actually did a whole rebrand for victim services, and I'm not sure if we've gotten to that booklet yet. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make a quick note of that, and I'm definitely going to, yeah, I'm gonna send that along once I have it. So give me just
Yeah.
one quick second. I've just popped my email into the chat, so
Okay.
definitely I'll double check on that and I'll see where that is in the process of sort of being recreated.
And it was very helpful, and so was meeting with Dandy. I found that was I hadn't expected it, and when we got there, it really changed the whole tone of the meeting, and it really calmed the person down in terms of talking about things that they weren't that comfortable. So that was amazing. But the tool itself, I was able to get a copy, and I've used it. So I just thought if that was something we could even send out to other people. The other question I had was around this might seem odd, but it's happened many times. So a situation where somebody that we're supporting, um, let's say someone's called the police because they've been aggressive or acting out, whatever it is, the situation, and having a really hard time regulating themselves. And the police arrive and immediately maybe put them in handcuffs. They've used pepper spray, maybe just really, they've seen the situation at risk, obviously, but the individual we support may have some long-term trauma from that type of situation. They may have a hard time processing what happened. There's now a huge fear of police. Is there any type of counseling they may get for that type of situation? I'm thinking of somebody, let's say, with autism, and really that would have impacted them in terms of uh, the aggressiveness of how they were held, and like I say, the handcuffs, being restrained. I don't know if they'd be eligible, since they were the ones who incurred a charge, but is that something that could be available to them?
Yeah, so those supports are still available. So even for example, like even if somebody does incur a charge, that's not really I would say our primary concern. It's if the person's been victimized in any way, shape, or form. So I'll even give an example. Like a lot of human trafficking victims are coerced into recruiting more human trafficking, more victims to traffic. We still provide support to the people, that have been trafficked because they're still a victim, right? So that's just one quick example, but yeah, we definitely still provide support and resources, and so we could definitely help out there as well. I think that's a really great um example, and we're happy to help.
Thank you.
No worries, Jody. I see that you've got a question.
Yes, just on the back of the initial question, I'm just wondering what resources you have that are like easy read documents about services that we can use to support our clients. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries at all. So, I have a couple of different things. What I can do is maybe I'll send over some of our resources to Deanna. Like I said, unfortunately, because some of our stuff is sort of being reconstructed and rebranded, essentially, we are missing some of the resources that we normally have. So I'll see what we have easily accessible, and I'm happy to send that over to Deanna, who will have the list of everybody who's here today and can send that out. I'm seeing Deanna nodding, so that's perfect. Any other questions?
Jasminder, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Sorry, I'm seeing Pascal. I feel like I may be mispronouncing that.
No, it's good.
Okay, please feel free to correct me, but go for it.
Okay, it's not a question. Is that okay?
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
of a comment. Tammy, that was a good question. I'm glad I attended because I didn't realize some of the potential cases where will apply for your services. But what I want to say is I'm so glad I can talk to you and to I want to give praise, and I want to say thank you, because I knew about Victim Services Toronto, but recently I witnessed firsthand all the help that you provided to one of our clients. And I can tell everybody how you were angels and miracle workers, and how the big difference and the amazing work you did. You were unbelievable, and what you did was the client's family will forever be grateful. I'm so impressed. I'm still so impressed with everything you did for that person. I can't believe it. I mean, I had no idea you could help to that extent. This was a case of you will remember if I say a lot of violence, physical, emotional, and the person had to flee. You took that person in charge. You found a place. She had to hide. You took her, found a place so she could be safe in hiding. When she went to her place, she had to go get belonging. You arranged for police to escort her, get her place. You accompanied her to hospital, dentist. Her jaw was all, not working and all that. She had to move. You arranged support for, you found movers. Anyways, and everybody, the staff at the place where she was hiding for weeks, the movers to another city, I just cannot. You helped so much. You were so unbelievable. I didn't know, and honestly, I don't know what our clients will have done without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I wish everybody knew about you. And then when I asked Dina I said, I have a client who needs like counseling like now. Dina, you responded right away. You said, yeah, you can arrange that. And I didn't call you back because it was like too fast. And the shelter staff were great, but unbelievable. So I'm gonna stop right now because of time, but it's like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's like, I'm still in awe. You were amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. You just made my day. I feel like I'm so grateful to be a part of such an incredible team that does make such an impact and that does do work that really makes clients feel like we're here for them. That's our goal of the work that we do each and every single day. So I'm so grateful that you felt that way and that your client felt that way as well. I can't take the credit. I wasn't their work or anything, but I'm just so grateful and humbled to be a part of their team. I also wanted
all
to
your
say,
team. I mean,
yeah,
literally we're like an angel miracle worker. Like, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm so grateful to be a part of that team. And I also just want to say a huge thank you to Deanna as well for um just being a part of or bringing us onto the shared learning forum. So that way we can have these conversations and more people can know about the work that we do as well. I think that's a huge part of it too. So yeah, very grateful for that. I see that you also have your hand up.
Yeah, I want to just acknowledge the language support. So one of the things that I think we all struggle with in our sector is getting language support. There's no funding to communicate with families in crisis or deal with situations in crisis. And if we were able to refer or discuss with someone to get some language support, is that a possibility of a partnership around proceeding with those things?
Yeah,
Do that?
I think there definitely is because we do provide support in a lot of different languages, and it's sometimes it can be unique to actually get trauma informed support in the language that you need as well. That's really a specialty. So I'm sure that we can definitely figure something out there as well. Where you can call especially with the crisis line, like we have a lot of and we have access to translation services. We have those 35 languages in house. So we can definitely figure something out from there. So yeah, 100%.
Wonderful. So the other thing I just want to say too is our domestic human trafficking team at Montage that supports victims with intellectual developmental disability is in close partnership with Victim Services Toronto. And we have one of our wonderful members from our team actually works with Victim Services, Mackenzie, and we work really closely. So for any of you individuals on here learning today about Victim Services, just know that they're a resource for our DS sector, and we've built that relationship since the team started even before. So we're really thrilled to not only tell you about that, but also just for you guys to be aware of Victim Services and how great they are. So it is a privilege, and I'm glad Pascal was able to share their great work, because we all need this and we all need to support our people. And this is yet another way as a resource to show that we have some really amazing stuff out here. So we're really excited to be able to share that and to hear Pascal's amazing positive story. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much for that. And yeah, we definitely do work in partnership, and Mackenzie's absolutely phenomenal. And we're so grateful in so many different ways. So yeah. Any other questions? Any final questions? I know the time is coming close to 11 o'clock. I feel like folks are getting that itch.
I'm
I
saying
know we're almost done. Yeah, I know we're almost done, Jasminder. Hopefully this is a very quick question.
Yeah.
A lot of the people we support, some of them might live in, let's say, Toronto community housing, and they're really vulnerable to an apartment takeover. And suddenly they're super at risk of losing their housing. There might be suddenly some drug use, and they're really taken advantage of. Would that be considered a referral, like to support that person? Like, I don't know if that fits for an event that happened to them, but it escalates very quickly sometimes.
I'm not 100% sure because I
Okay.
don't do the things directly, but honestly, we can categorize something under crime or sudden tragedy. Yeah, you can refer it over to us.
Okay.
Like the things that we wouldn't take is something like, for example, like we had a police officer call us that said like we have this grandma who said her 18-year-old granddaughter won't go to school. um like that's a kind of referral that, like, unfortunately, as much as we'd love to help grandma and as much as we appreciate grandma for supporting her granddaughter and trying to get her to go to school, and we feel for her, like that wouldn't be considered a crime or sudden tragedy, right? So um anything that you feel would meet that threshold, I think that does meet that threshold. You can give us a call, and we may have limitations because it might not fit into that VQRP boxes that it's made, right? So there might be some limitations in terms of that, but there's no limitation in terms of the community resources that we're connected to, and the supports that we can potentially provide. So we're happy to do that.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's what I was thinking. It might be just maybe not directly by you, but maybe you direct them to where they could get that support.
Exactly. And we're
Okay.
also kind of like, I like to kind of think of our crisis team as system navigators in the city of Toronto. They're really intimately familiar with the resources that are available. And they also know the types of referrals that enhanced services can take, or would be beneficial to take, in order to actually get them the right resources. There might be some things where, yeah, we can take them, but hey, you know what? I think Montage could serve them better, or I think community living could serve them better. And so, instead of serving them and then we no longer meet their needs and now they have to start with somebody else, we just connect them from the beginning. So that's kind of, just an example. But Tammy, I think that's a great question. Okay, so I'm seeing that the time is 11:01. With that, I'm gonna pass my mic back to Dina. I just want to say thank you all so much for the opportunity to speak here and learn from you all and share knowledge with you all. I'm so incredibly grateful, and I definitely look forward to seeing you all around, and definitely at the event that Dina was mentioning as well. So back to you.